ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world show made for the fans by a fan. I am your host, as always, Richard Demon. This is Football and Nonsense. Thank you all for tuning in on this Wednesday evening. It is Fantasy Wednesday here on the Fan Show, and every Wednesday that means that the program is devoted to helping you fantasy footballers, you phenoms of the fantasy world, get through your fantasy season. We are in the home stretch of the fantasy regular season. Hopefully you have listened to our advice here week in and week out on the show and read up on Mr. Brandon's fantasy guru-ish advice, and you have secured yourself a nice winning record. If you're in a 8-team playoff, you've secured top 4 seed. If you're in a 4-team playoff, then well, you're not quite out of the woods yet, unless you're undefeated, and then the only other teams you have to worry about have yet to win at all. So, of the 6 leagues I'm in, I believe I will make the playoffs in probably 2, maybe 1. I'm hoping to, if I run the table right now, and it's a 4 playoff one, so if I run the table right now, which I've won 2 out of my last 3, which is good, and I am currently a game behind the 4th seed, so that's good. That's good. Schedule doesn't get any easier for me, but then again, nothing worth having ever is. The rest of them, though, I can happily say that I'm no longer winless in one of the leagues, the WBLZ Sports League. Man, I was like the fish out of water. I was obliterated like the first couple of weeks. I lost 7 straight games, and then finally I won this last week, and it was a miracle because there was like 3 games in a row that I should have won, and I didn't, and it was very disappointing. This is one of those years, for that league anyway, where if I had played probably any of the other 12 teams, I would have won. I was being beat by the guy that scored the highest for that week, and I hate that. It's so frustrating. Like, if you're going to get beat by the guy that scores the most points that week, you might as well be the guy that scores the lowest points that week. That way it's not so discouraging, because when you're in a league of 12 teams, and you look around and you're just like, man, I put up 150 points. The guy that beat me put up 151, and all the rest put up like 140, 130, 90. It's just, oof. It's tough. It really is. But anyway, of the 6, Zach Brunner and I, we did a joint league together, the Fans League, and we got a belt for that one. Looks like I will probably not make the postseason in that one. I thought I was securing another much-needed victory this last week, and then in the end, Kareem Hunt. Wouldn't you know it? Kareem Hunt. But that's okay. That's all right. Some worthy fan will win that league, and it might not even be me or Zach. I'm pretty much out. I forget what Zach's record is, but he might be out as well, which is good, though. We're about the fans. In my Fan Nation League, though, I'm tied for, I'm in a 4-way tie with 3rd place right now. And there is also a belt on the line for that one. A couple other fun leagues that I did just because people said, hey, I need an extra body. I said, yeah, sure. I still set my lineups. I'm still active on the waiver wire because I believe that, if it's going to be fun, you need to be competitive regardless of what the prize is at the end. So I'm the guy that whether I've won all of my games or none of my games, I will still trade, claim, and set my lineup every week just like I would. I'm not going to ditch out after week 5. That's not what I'm about. If you do, that's your own thing. I don't respect it because I think that's kind of sad and pitiful, but to each their own. And then, of course, in the league that got me started in fantasy football, the one I'm in with all my closest buddies, yes, we are an 8-man league. Nobody cares, okay? I don't. It's an 8-man league, and it's that way because we had 2 people drop off last minute. It's usually a 10 to 12-person league, but this year it's an 8 league, and I said, I don't have a problem with this. I don't. We're 8 close friends. We always have a good time with this. It's a $15 buy-in, and with 8 people, it's all going to go to the winner. There's a trophy that I designed and went to our local trophy shop and said, this is what I want. Make it happen. Brought it back. It's beautiful. We've had it for the last 3 years. I've been in it for, I think, 7 now, and it's been a lot of fun. So That's what it's about. It's about fun. If you're one of those people that you only do the big money leagues and it's like life and death and you end friendships, I don't know how you sleep at night. If you win, I'm sure you probably sleep on all your wadded up ones or the big fake check that they give you. Whatever the case may be, that's great. So that's what Fantasy Wednesday is all about. Brandon and Jake from FlurrySports.org will join me tonight. We're going to talk fantasy football. But of course, at the top of every show, and there's a lot of them, let's get through the headlines. And headlines, of course, are brought to you by the good folks at mybookie.ag, where you bet matters, and tis the holiday season now that Halloween has come and gone. We're officially in November. Happy November to you all and Fan Nation. But this means that the countdown to the holiday season is officially in full swing. Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's, and before you know it, 2018, oh my goodness, what will it have in store for us? But holiday cash, you need it, and I know where to get it. MyBookie is the place to score some serious cha-ching bling and cash in on your sports predictions. Believe it or not, the holidays, they're here, right? It's time to start prepping, planning, doing your holiday shopping. Don't let it sneak up on you like it does me, okay? That's no fun, and nobody wins then. Now you're the guy camping out at midnight for a Tickle Me Elmo. You don't want to be that guy. Besides, you probably should do better shopping than a Tickle Me Elmo anyway. But where you bet matters, and so you've got parties, gifts, and spending. You've got football, baseball, hockey, basketball. Speaking of which, World Series Game 7 tonight at 5:20 Pacific time. It is all tied up, and it all comes down to this. We'll talk about that in a moment. But man up and play like the pros on game day. You can play the money line, the side of the total. MyBookie is your hookup for all your betting needs, and it offers super fast payouts when you win. So basically what you want to do is you want to visit mybookie.ag. You want to sign up, register, use that promo code TheFanShow, and you will get up to a 50% bonus kickback from mybookie.ag today. When you do that, you play, you win, you get paid at mybookie.ag today. And the headlines, like I said, there was a bunch of them. Yesterday was the trade deadline. And as a result, didn't even need to put it up to a vote. There was so much feedback when this particular event happened that there is, for the first time in a long time, not the first time this has ever happened, but the first time in a long time, there is a unanimous, without a doubt, ButtFumble award winner for this week. And I'm so happy about that, because sometimes there's a lot of nominees. Sometimes there's not really any nominees, but sometimes there's a week where it's just like that. That moment right there. You can't even put it up for discussion. That moment has sealed the deal. So we'll talk about it. But, of course, the night before the trade deadline, Jimmy G, he's off to San Francisco. He made his first appearance yesterday in Santa Clara with Mr. Shanahan and Mr. Lynch, talking about his excitement to be the next quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. When will he start? That is the speculation now, of course, on the episode last night. In case you missed it, Mr. James LeBreton and myself, he is from 49ers Web Zone and Niners Noise. We talked about when we believed would be a good start for him. Of course, 49ers are said to possibly win, if any, these three games that are coming up in their near future, which happens to be the Cardinals, the Giants, and the Bears. Well, the Cardinals are this weekend, and they've already said that he will probably not suit up and play for that game. But then the next game is the Giants, then a bye week, then the Seahawks, and then I think after that is the Bears, which is that third and final game that they are predicted to possibly win if they're going to get a win. So maybe the Giants. I believe it'll be a home game. I do. That'll give the fans something to look forward to and buy tickets to go see. So if not the Giants, because that's just before a bye week, I think James and I are on the same page. James called it last night. He believes that they'll put him out there against the Seahawks. And oh man, tough. That's a tough call for me. If I'm a coach, I'm thinking, baptism by fire. Maybe not this hot of a fire, but it is a rivalry game. It is within the division, and what better way to put an end to the tyranny that is Seattle over San Francisco than to showcase Jimmy G. He'd have plenty of time by then to get down to the playbook and work some rapport with his receivers and get in the rhythm with the offense. So all eyes are on Jimmy G in San Francisco. Other trades that happened. Jay Ajayi, he is an Eagle now. Kelvin Benjamin is a Bill now. And then, oh my goodness. A.J. McCarron was almost a Brown. That's right. Trade deadline happened, and it was apparently both sides were like, yeah, let's make this deal happen. Let's do it. And the Browns forgot to notify somebody, or they forgot to send the paperwork back. Look, I get that mistakes happen and that things can get blown out of proportion. But the simple fact is that when I dig into this on Twitter and social media and say, okay, I got to have some kind of backup on this, because I saw one tweet initially and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. But it was the Browns, so it didn't surprise me. The first one said, Browns too busy celebrating trade deal, forgot to submit final paperwork for the trade. Trade deadline passed, and NFL said, no, we're not gonna do it. Sometimes I wonder if the NFL gets a kick out of punishing the Browns more, because there's been a few times that the Browns have done things that the NFL is just like, we're not going to help you out on this, and this is one of them. But oh man, it was so funny, so funny. So I went and I read a little deeper, and of course, some of the more professional sites are just like, yeah, there was an error on one or more parties' end for this deal, and it fell through last minute. I don't buy that. Not this Browns front office. No. So I started reading more. I saw that the Browns allegedly forgot to fax back the paperwork. I heard that they forgot to notify the NFL. I've heard that they forgot. Basically, the Browns forgot to do something very key in the process of a trade, and therefore there was no trade. And only in Cleveland, in the world of professional football, does something like that happen. So as I mentioned, this Wednesday, today, right now, you're listening to one of the rare times that we have a unanimous winner for the what? The ButtFumble Award! Congratulations, Cleveland Browns front office, because of the complete lack of due diligence on your part and ability to execute the needed things to make this happen, and for just being Cleveland Browns in this time and failing to get A.J. McCarron, you are the unanimous winner of the ButtFumble Award. Oh man, it doesn't get much better than that. It really doesn't. Oh, so thank you, Cleveland. Speaking of Cleveland, Josh Gordon has been reinstated on a conditional basis. In fact, that happened just before I hit live on the show. And let's go ahead and take a look here at what the official press release for that was. Josh Gordon to be reinstated on a conditional basis. Commissioner Roger Goodell notified Josh Gordon of the Cleveland Browns today that he will be reinstated to the NFL on a conditional basis, effective immediately. Gordon may join the Browns to attend meetings, engage in conditioning work and individual workouts, subject to compliance with clinical and other requirements. He will be placed on the commissioner's exempt list and be permitted to practice with the team beginning on Monday, November 20th. Beginning Monday, November 27th, Gordon will be eligible at the team's discretion to return to active status or to remain on the commissioner's exempt list for an additional week before returning to active status. As emphasized at today's meeting, everyone, including Josh's teammates and coaches, the Browns ownership and organization, the program professionals, and all of us at the league office want him to have every opportunity to resume his career and to be successful in the NFL, said Goodell. Whether that happens, however, at the end of the day will depend on Josh. His commitment to sobriety and to reaching his goals in football and beyond will determine his success. It ultimately is up to Josh. Gordon has been suspended indefinitely since September of 2016 without pay for multiple violations of the NFLPA policy and program for substance abuse. Now, there's a few things in there. I like how Goodell made a point to emphasize that this is on Josh, because in all honesty, I feel like it's been more on the NFL than on Mr. Gordon. Why? Well, because it seems a bit ridiculous that a guy has been exiled from the NFL for going on 2 years now because of some pot. Like, really? Really? But as I mentioned, I think sometimes that the NFL is out to punish the Browns and kind of prank them a little bit because of things like the trade and them not honoring it yesterday. Well, what day did Josh Gordon get reinstated? Oh, yeah, today, which is after the trade deadline. So he is stuck in Cleveland until the end of the season and whatever the team decides to do with him. So that phrase in there, I wish him the best and I want him to have every opportunity, really? Because I feel like 24 hours prior probably would have been a better time to reinstate him, because then maybe he, I don't know, could have gone somewhere other than Cleveland. Happy for the Browns, happy for Gordon, sad for him at the same time, because I don't know how much of a future you really will have in a place like Cleveland right now with how much of a mess that front office is obviously right now. It just is such a mess. So Cleveland is going to Cleveland, Browns are going to Brown, and that sums it up for the latest headlines. The Zeke Elliott suspension has been upheld after a judge went and snuffed out the whole restraining order that he had on the NFL. How long this lasts, I don't know. I just want the guy to serve his damn suspension and get it over with already. He has manipulated and abused the system for too long. And I don't care what you say about the NFL and not having evidence. This is an image thing, okay? He is a guy that they set out, said you are being punished for this regardless of what X, Y, or Z is. It's because of the way that it's been handled, and we are handling it as such. The dude needs to just serve his suspension, plain and simple. So it bugs me that we'll see if he gets the 6 games or not. Right now, he's under suspension. And then there's been a few conspiracy theories, a couple that I'm a big fan of as far as the Jimmy Garoppolo trade. One conspiracy is that Belichick made this trade with the Niners instead of the Browns because he still has some harsh feelings over his time in Cleveland and is looking to do some friends a solid before he makes his inevitable exit from the NFL. Another one is that the Patriots are playing the ultimate long con where they send this quarterback off to be a starter, and even though there hasn't been any long-term negotiations yet, at the end of the season he'll become a free agent, and then at that time he'll leave San Francisco and go right back to New England, and all will be sunshine and rainbows. They got a second-round pick out of it. That is a very bold conspiracy theory, but I will say it is well thought, and I wouldn't put it past the Patriots. So with that, those are the headlines. I'm going to bring on my first guest of the evening, Brandon of Team Fan Show. He is our fantasy guru, and we're going to talk some fantasy football. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more of the Fan Show after this. You're listening to The Fan Show, your home for all things football and nonsense. My special guest tonight, Farouk. Farouk, welcome.
He's no expert, but here's the thing. Football and nonsense is what he brings. Sports talk with a twist. It's The Fan Show.
Do you know him as Kevin from the League? It is none other than very funny Steve Ranazisi.
99% of the population doesn't know who I am, but the 1% do. They yell and scream inappropriate things at me in public.
Kyle Ray. Kyle, welcome.
And I was like, wow, I think we just saw the whole Super Bowl, Phyllis. It's like that scene in The Simpsons, like, why rent the movie? I just saw the best part.
Funny man Brad Williams.
Yeah, I'm here. No, I flew in just for your podcast. I've heard about this podcast. I've heard it's fantastic.
It's Mac and Farva, but they are my special guests tonight. Steve Lemmy, Kevin Heffernan.
I was in Mexico for 10 weeks in a Speedo. Like, that was me going to work. I was putting on a Speedo.
Farva is the most fun to play, and it was a blast to do that again, to do Farva again.
So then the makeup artist had to put Vaseline on your body, right? Yeah. And then put the powdered sugar on top of that. Is your name really Richard Siemens?
Listen live every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday night on Spreaker.com, or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud. All right, we are back, and joining me is the tight end whisperer, Brandon of Team Fan Show. Welcome back, Brandon. How you doing tonight?
Great. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good, man. It was quite the shake-up yesterday as far as the trade deadline goes. I've heard some people say it was the biggest shake-up that they've seen in NFL history, come trade deadline. And I think I mentioned that on last night's show too, that there was a few big names that I recall in recent years that made a move, maybe even a few surprise moves, but nothing like this. I did not see the J Train leaving for Philadelphia. I didn't see the Garoppolo thing happening the night before. And Kelvin Benjamin leaving Carolina, that one really caught me off guard because it seemed like he was destined to be a Carolina Panther forever. But nonetheless, here we are, Josh Gordon reinstated on a conditional basis. But let's go ahead and talk about the fantasy impact that some of those trades have that we saw yesterday. I guess the biggest question for a lot of people, when these trades happen, and since the deadline is on a Tuesday, a lot of these games happen Sunday, immediate impact for anyone, or would you probably claim them now and then hold off for at least another week?
So I think there's definitely an immediate impact for not only the people that are replacing those traded players, but also those traded players. So I know the coach of the Eagles said that, it's not a promise that Ajayi even sees the ball this week. That terrifies me. They have to learn the schemes. Hopefully they're the same running schemes, whether it's zone or man or whatever you would like to call it. But, that worries me big time for people like Benjamin, especially. His routes are going to be a lot more difficult than something like Ajayi learning his. That being said, the replacements, I think, will be huge. So I think Funchess becomes an automatic starter every week from here on out. And that trade didn't surprise me that much, only because those two players are almost the exact same, especially if you're getting a third-round pick. I mean, the Dolphins only got a fourth round for Ajayi. And how one of those was getting away with murder, so I'm pretty sure the Eagles got away with something they shouldn't have. But the other thing is a lot of those players are walking into a system that isn't too great. So let's just say Ajayi has another bye week that he has to go through. Mm-hmm. So that's 2 in one season. He may miss this week without a lot of participation. Man, that's a super tough situation for owners of that player. But feeling okay about Drake as a running back. I don't think Williams has the capabilities of taking over that position from him. But that offensive line is so bad. But the other thing is, I think Devontae Parker becomes a much bigger target to keep when he's healthy for when Cutler comes back. I'm buying big on him.
Okay. So clearly the guys that were involved in the trade, Ajayi, Benjamin, guys like that, are going to be ones that will probably be just fine once they get integrated into their new system. However, the people that they're leaving for Miami, it doesn't really have much upside for their running backs because there is multiple ones and we're not sure who's going to rise to the occasion. You believe Drake, and that has been the popular opinion. But for Carolina to ship off Kelvin Benjamin, who was without a doubt their wide receiver one, and without having Greg Olsen there, we saw an uptick by the other tight end, Ed Dixon. But Funchess has kind of been in that gray area. So why would you get rid of your number one guy, and what does this mean for the rest of the offense? Probably, maybe even so, the running game, if anything.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good question. Like I said, I think Devin is very similar to Benjamin, where they're the same type of player.
Yeah.
And I think at some point you just have to get rid of one of them, and Benjamin was most likely that guy. And the stats are really, really odd when Benjamin starts. They actually have a losing percentage when he does play, and they're 15-1 when he doesn't. So that's obviously not causation, but I think the reasoning behind that is getting the younger players involved a lot more. So a name that I'm keeping an eye on is Curtis Samuel for the Panthers. He'll be their second string wide receiver. It's probably going to be McCaffrey and Funchess getting all the targets, but if he establishes some rapport with Cam, that's someone that I think can really, really take off. But that trade still doesn't surprise me. And Benjamin might be someone who can take you through the playoffs once he gets to the Bills and Tyrod can work with him a little more.
Yeah, it's all about establishing a relationship and building rapport when it comes to these receivers. We've seen so many, guys make it or break it based on who their quarterback was. And so obviously you have a guy with the talent that Benjamin is going up to Buffalo where there is a guy like Tyrod Taylor who is their quarterback, without any doubts. In Denver, obviously there's a mess going on there. Cleveland, there's a mess going on there. So you go somewhere where you have your guy at quarterback. He's needed a true wide receiver one. He gets one now. So I think we're going to see a lot of targets. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of plays made immediately just because you have to, again, integrate yourself into the playbook. You have to find a rhythm, and you have to figure out each other's tendencies. But I do think probably the most upside for either of these two, like if you had to say a clear-cut winner between the Benjamin move and the Ajayi move, is probably Benjamin. I think he's going somewhere where they will utilize his talents to the fullest ability. Jay, I get it for Philly, but at the same time, they haven't really been a run-dominant team, and he's a run-dominant guy.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. So Tyrod has been able to somehow spin gold with the team that he has, and it's really nothing special. Once he gets Benjamin out there, a distinctly different wide receiver than what they've had in the past, I think both of them will go off pretty well in the rest of the season, especially if Charles Clay sees a little more time off. I didn't buy into the Ajayi hype train this year. Even with 3 200-yard games last year, it's an all-or-nothing player from what I've seen. The Dolphins do have a terrible offensive line, but the Eagles also just lost somebody. So, man, that's so tough. I think that Benjamin does have the better year after this, only because of the limitations that they're already placing on Jay, a bye week, and they still have Blunt behind him trying to take away goal line carries.
Wow. Well, I guess, only time will tell on these, and I do wish the best for both of them, I really do. I think that Jay was kind of on a sinking ship there in Miami, especially with the Cutler injury and not really having much of an offensive line. I mean, night and day difference between this season and last season. But if he still is the true talent that we believe he is, like what we saw 2016, then I definitely hope that he has found a good home in Philadelphia. And other news with the trades that went on, my question here is more for the future, and that is the Jimmy Garoppolo acquisition by San Francisco. Is he someone that you think you could pick up now and stash them in case you find yourself in a playoff situation where your quarterback is being sat for a game or possibly gets hurt? And I know that there's only a handful of quarterbacks that are worth sitting, and among that, even less teams that are in a position to possibly sit during that whole playoff stretch for fantasy football. But regardless, let's have a little bit of a fun what if game here and see what your thoughts are on Jimmy G in San Francisco.
So I would say no. And my main reason for that is Shanahan actually came out today and said that there's no promise that he even sees the field this year. That's probably BS, right? So they just traded for him. He will put people in the seats and will earn money, jersey sales, and they need to sign him for, upcoming years. So I think he will be out there. I don't think he has a lot to work with. But I do like him as a player. I think he's a great quarterback just from what I've seen from his previous games that he's played. But that's not somebody that I would be confident starting. And actually, if you want to watch the videos of how bad that offensive line are, they're pretty funny. And you probably know a lot about that.
I know plenty.
There's a video going around where their right tackle lets somebody run past him, and he just
he bops him on the head.
Lightly brushes his shoulder.
Yeah, he does something. It's either like a bop on the shoulder or a bop on the head, and I'm like, dude, I'd kill you.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, if I saw this video, I would go and I'd be like, it's your job to protect my ass. I'm going to take you out now.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think he will start eventually. I would say give him 3 weeks. 3 weeks, I think he'll start.
I thought
Because
at
they
the
know that they're not
soonest-
winning already.
Yeah, my thought, the soonest would be against the Giants. That's a home game. It's a winnable game, but it is just before the bye week. And then my guest last night said, yeah, I'd give him the game right after the bye week, which unfortunately happens to be Seattle. But hey, if it's a game that you're not supposed to win and you want to sell tickets and get fans there, I guess to have a new attraction is better than nothing. But it would just really hurt to see him go out there and be a tackling dummy for 4 quarters against a really bad defense, just a really mean, rugged defense. But anyway, we'll see what happens with that. My condolences to your Zach Miller. That was an absolutely gruesome injury. And NFL referees made the list yesterday because that was an obvious touchdown. They've made this mistake several times this year. And for a guy to give his leg and possibly his career for his team, and for you to not even give it to him, I really wanted to punch that ref in the dick. I'm not even joking. But I wish him a not only speedy recovery, but that we have not seen him for the last time on an NFL field.
Yeah, definitely one of the most odd calls I think I've ever seen. That was out there. It seemed like a call they made and didn't want to change it just to save face, but then now they look just terrible. So glad to hear he's doing okay. Pretty brutal. Don't think I've ever seen anything like that before.
Neither have I.
Yeah.
In fact, it took like 4 replays before I actually saw what happened with his knee, because the whole time I'm watching the play, I'm like, okay, so he goes up, he gets it, possession, falls, rolls, still possession. Okay, that's a touchdown, stupid. And then all I see are tweets just like, oh my God, that play, I don't want to ever see it again. Stop showing the replay. And I was like, it's a touchdown though. Like what? And then all of a sudden I look and I'm like, oh God. And then I threw up a bit in my mouth and I was like, So yeah, best wishes to him. He is a great tight end. You are the tight end whisperer now. Can you give us any look into the future as far as guys that are on your radar that you believe could be big? Your article yesterday, of course, you called the shot of Mr. Doyle in Indianapolis. You have been very high on Austin Seferian-Jenkins, and I forget who the third tight end was. I think Ingram was it, but who do you got coming up this week that's been kind of lingering in your danger zone?
Sure. So there's a couple I think to keep an eye on upcoming that may be available or may be available for trade. I would say Jared Cook is definitely somebody that I'm keeping an eye on. I hate to say it because I was huge on him. What was it, last year when he was with Green Bay? I thought he was going to become something gigantic, right? He's got Rodgers throwing to him.
Yeah.
But he did nothing. This year, he's starting to finally come around and become productive. So the last 2 games, he's had 12 targets, which is pretty good, but he's caught 10 of them for 164 yards. So the average per reception is insane for him. That's someone that I like. Carr is starting to come around a little more. I think trusting Cooper for those third down catches is a little iffy, so I think he's starting to look his way quite a bit more. Okay. The other ones that I have, I do think Ed Dixon is someone to keep an eye on. Never really a downfield player other than the one game where he had a ridiculous amount of yards, 180 or something. But since then, he hasn't gone over 35 or so. But the potential is definitely there, and he plays against Atlanta this week, so I'm kind of feeling good about that one. Lastly, the Cleveland tight end Njoku, I think, is somebody to keep an eye on after this bye week. I think Kaiser looked a lot better this week, and he's definitely the best receiver on that team. And Josh Gordon doesn't get to practice for another 19 days, so we can halt that hype train for at least a little bit. That's not going to have any effect on his ability to play. So definitely a big fan of his. There was a reason he was drafted in the first round. Someone that I would like to stash on my team if I've got the opportunity to do so.
Is Travis Kelce worth trading for if you are in a spot where clearly you're probably going to make the postseason in your league and tight end happens to be one of your weakest positions, is he a guy that, of all the positions, is worth going after at this point?
I think if you can get him for a decent value after his bye week, sure. So I would say, who could you even trade? Maybe like a DeMarco Murray for him. Some people might call me crazy, but I'm just not a big fan of Murray's. Someone that's has relied on the touchdown this year that isn't really producing yardage-wise. I would feel great about trading for Kelsey for that because he is exploding yardage-wise, but not touchdown-wise. So that will regress up to his normal, and he will continue to see a lot more red zone looks. So I'm a big fan of his. He is their possession receiver on the team, so he will always see a ton of targets.
All right, well, you heard it here. It is Brandon, the tight end whisperer and resident fantasy guru for Team Fan Show. You can read all of his fantasy articles and get some knowledge dropped on you for the rest of your fantasy season at thefanshow.com/fantasy. Click on that fantasy tab. So, Brandon, I thank you again for stopping by the show, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Oh, you too. And I'm just very glad that Juju got his bike back. That's all that matters.
So am I. All right, thanks, Brandon.
Thanks,
you take care. Yep. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that will bring us to the bottom of the hour, a little past, and I do have another guest to get to talk some more fantasy football, so don't go anywhere. Don't touch that dial. We've got more of The Fan Show after this.
This is The Sheet.
Gets me all revved up. My face is now red. My ears are just freaking boiling.
He's so raw that Sky hates him.
Yeah, he had 51 touchdowns. 4,900 total yards.
I know y'all like that, but I got to run. And only in Alabama that could happen, I have to say.
They're so good, man. They would win the Big Ten if they were in the Big Ten. You could be doing something vision-based in front of you and reach down and grab a handful of insane goodness.
Give it to him. Kudos. I'm clapping like a golfer. Very good, Johnny. I'm proud of you.
Wow. You guys agree on something again? I'm very impressed. You ever had a bad week? Just you walk outside, step in a puddle, like right when you walk outside. I mean, how's there a puddle right outside the house? Or you stand on the curb and somebody drives by and splashes water up on you? Or it's just raining on you, not anyone else?
I will tell you, before you go any further, I cannot hear Chad when he speaks.
Good. You're listening to The Sheet, man. I don't really know what we're doing.
Every Saturday morning, 8 to 10 a.m. right here on WBLZ Sports.
Whether it be your industrial, commercial, or residential needs, Gen Service is the electrical contractor for you. The Gen Service team has the expertise, commitment, and educational years to help you solve all your electrical concerns. They have you in their best interest with helpful suggestions to accommodate your every want. Give them a call, no matter the size of the job, at 740-438-7173. Mention WBLZ Sports, and you'll get a discount. That's Gen Service, 740-438-7173.
This is Nick Ciccarelli, the mad scientist of sports. Join me and Dr. D, Derek Jones, live every Saturday night, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Pacific, for the Mad Scientist Sports Lab. The big intellects, the experiments on the chalkboard, and the guest subjects will be rolling in. Mad Scientist Sports Lab, only on WBLZ Sports, where we got balls.
Doug Peffer Painting and Pressure Washing. He has over 30 years of painting experience. He's interior, exterior, commercial or residential. Doug Peffer covers it all. Is your house looking ugh? We'll call on Doug. Doug Peffer Painting and Pressure Washing. 404-966-3361. Mention WBLZ Sports and get a special We've Got Balls discount. That's Doug Peffer Painting and Pressure Washing. 404-966-3361.
Check out Thursday Night Tailgate, where NFL legends live on. We bring you 5 NFL legends every week, sharing their stories and insights, plus our spotlight on the positive. Hear which players are doing great things in their communities. Now on WBLZ Sports Talk Radio and WBLZSports.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back, and joining me now on the program is Jake from FlurrySports.org. Welcome back, Jake. How you doing?
Oh, doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. I do love talking fantasy football on these Wednesdays here on the Fan Show. Now, first part of the show, I had my resident fantasy expert on, and we talked about some of the fallout from yesterday, the big winner and loser. I think in the fantasy realm, we agreed that Kelvin Benjamin was a bigger winner than Jay just because of the impact that he could potentially have on a team that really needs a true wide receiver one, where Jay is going to a team that is, 6-1, 7-1 now, and they haven't really needed to have that running aspect, but they get it. What did you take away from yesterday as far as the big winners and losers?
One of the biggest things I took away is I thought it was a lot easier to tell who lost than who won. One of the biggest losers, LeGarrette Blount and everyone who owned him, poor guys. One of them was me. I had him. But I think Jay is someone who I think will be a really good change of pace back. But I would lean to agree with you that Benjamin in Buffalo, he'll succeed more there than Jay will in Philadelphia in terms of fantasy output. I think for people who had other offensive targets in Buffalo, this hurts them pretty badly. But I think overall it was the surrounding teams who some players took hits. But I think the people who actually moved, I don't know how much this helps them in terms of production. Benjamin definitely, I think, gets the biggest bump.
Yeah, it was pretty obvious when I looked at what we were dealing with as far as their supporting cast. Buffalo doesn't have a wide receiver one since it shipped off Sammy Watkins, and Tyrod has kind of been doing it all himself. We have seen McCoy sort of pick up the slack there. Not that he was ever slacking off, but it took forever for him to find the end zone, and their defense has really done a bulk of the work up there. So I don't know a lot of people that own any of the receiving core in Buffalo, but I do know a lot of people, myself included, that own Kelvin Benjamin and hope that this works out the best for him. Those that own Jay, I think, are hoping that this is an upside for him because he's not behind a terrible line like he was in Miami anymore. I asked Brandon if he thought that Jimmy G could potentially be sort of a sleeper pick once you get into that part of the season where key quarterbacks begin to get rested. And I said not that there's many quarterbacks that you would have to worry about being rested, because of those, there's even fewer teams that are even in a position right now where they could potentially rest their starters. So we kind of covered everything. Josh Gordon's reinstated. I don't know if that's something that you hit up on the waiver wire yet or not, but that happened today also.
Yeah. I really like – I would like it more if the Browns had anyone, if he had anyone to throw him the ball, but I don't know if he does, It's just there's a real lack of anything there, so –
Yeah, I have this conspiracy theory of my own that the NFL likes to just punish the Browns at every chance that they get. I don't know why. I don't know the history here, because every Browns fan has told me that they're cursed because of decisions that the team made, and I don't know how that would affect the NFL itself. But when you go and say that you won't honor a trade that you forgot to hit the send button on a fax machine for, and then you reinstate your one draw for the crowd, your one glimmer of hope the day after the trade deadline. There's a few head scratchers here that it's like, sometimes it seems malicious.
It does. Oh, man. Yeah, the Browns are just, I think, a walking curse themselves. That's all they are.
That front office, they are the unanimous winner of the Butt Fumble Award for this week, because that is by definition what a butt fumble is. You can't get out of your own way for something that could potentially be a great thing, and I didn't even leave it up to a vote. I was like, if you don't agree with me on this for obvious reasons, you don't understand the show. But, let's look around at the rest of the landscape of the NFL here. Let's talk about more of the teams of these that the star player left. So Miami, now we see two running backs with the chance to sort of either have a decent committee or someone emerge as the guy. With the Zeke Elliott suspension, whether or not that holds this time or not, we have a similar situation in Dallas. On Carolina, we talked a little bit earlier in the show what this does to Funchess, Dixon, and then, of course, the running game there, because it's weird for a team to get rid of a wide receiver one when he is the obvious choice as your wide receiver one. Where if you look at a team like L.A. on the Rams, Woods is the most consistent, Kupp is the guy in your red zone, but Gurley is that team, so you could understand if they shipped off Kupp or Woods, because neither of them is like the guy, but Benjamin was in Carolina. So your thoughts about the impact that it will have on the teams that these players have left, and what you're looking for when it comes to the waiver wire the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I think you hit it right on the head right away. I think the biggest maybe plus side is going to be for Kenyon Drake in Miami. I think he's going to be their guy that'll get the most carries this week. And he'd be the big one I would target on the waiver wire this week if he's still out there. And he's out there in a lot of leagues for Miami. He's already getting a decent amount of touches when Jay was there. And I think he'll get quite a few this week, especially, with all the issues and injuries they've had at quarterback until Jay Cutler comes back. I also think that Carolina is an interesting one because right away when I saw the news that Benjamin left, Dixon, I think, is going to have huge numbers. I think Funchess is someone you should play this week and see how it goes. But I think the Panthers have also shown, and this is hard to manage sometimes as someone who has offensive fantasy players, but I think their most important weapon, honestly, is Luke Kuechly on defense. When he's there, they win. When he's not, they lose. They showed that this past week when he had 8 tackles and an interception. So I think Carolina's going to see a lot of the same production even without Benjamin. I don't think they're going to miss a beat pretty much. I think they might use those running backs a bit more in the passing game, which you could watch from a fantasy position. I wouldn't be surprised to see everyone's numbers kind of go up uniformly in Carolina. In Miami, I think it's more of a case of maybe 1 or 2 guys, Drake especially, who get a bump from that absence.
Okay. What are your thoughts on Dallas's backfield right now? We've seen McFadden. Morris is kind of a feast or famine guy from my history with him, whether he was in Washington or in Dallas. So are you going with consistency here, or is this going to be sort of a wait-and-see situation?
I think if you have to make a push for either of these guys, I think you're probably pretty desperate already. Maybe you just lost Zeke. And one of these guys would have been a good handcuff to have. And I think this week, especially, it's kind of a wait-and-see thing. But you go with McFadden this week. They're going to give him more carries. But like you said, with the feast and famine aspect of Morris, I would definitely agree with that. He's had years, especially in Washington, where you thought he'd really be the guy and someone who could be, a number 1 or number 2 on your fantasy team. That was a while ago, and I don't know if you trust him enough this week, but it might not be a bad pickup for a team that doesn't need to play him this week. Maybe you pick up Morris and give him a couple weeks, see how much they use him. I think if you have to play one of those guys right away, it's McFadden. But I think Morris could come out of it with some pretty good opportunities, especially as a change of pace guy.
Okay. Well, you look around the rest of the NFL, and of course it's pretty clear right now in most leagues which guys are making the playoffs and which are not, and then there's sort of that lingering gray area where they're either a game or 2 behind or a game or 2 ahead, and so this is really going to make or break them. What's the best strategy to approach this stretch of the season when it comes to either playing matchups, playing your bench? Sometimes I'm almost relieved when it's the bye week part of the season, because then I don't have decisions I have to make. Like, I'm forced to play the guys that are actually playing that week. So your strategy to get us through these next couple of weeks here of the regular season for fantasy.
Well, I think the first thing you got to do, and this is more of probably should have happened last week, but it's super crucial right now, is that if there's any big point guys out there in free agency in your league, some leagues this time of year are still sleeping on a couple guys out there, especially with all the trades we've seen. If there's someone out there who even has the potential for big points, this is a good time to experiment a little bit. Put them on your bench, maybe give them a week or 2, play them if you have to, or if you really think they're going to perform well based on that matchup. But I think you go to the matchups if you have enough points around that position to really try it out. A good example would be if you have a really good team around a flex or a number 2 running back, maybe you give Kenyon Drake a try from Miami. But I think you try and target the waiver wire as much as possible and get rid of those guys on your bench that you're never going to use. There's no point. You know what they are at this point in the season. If you have Matthews still a wide receiver from Buffalo, you got to try someone else. He's not going to do too much, especially now. So I think this is the time of the year where you trust what you got, and then you take a couple risks in the areas where you can afford to do so.
A couple of names I'm going to throw out to you are guys that I've heard people say that this is the time to use them, even if they haven't output a whole lot up until now, because they're on teams that this is a crucial point of the season for them, as far as like you think of the Raiders, the Ravens, the Titans, pretty much the whole AFC South, because they're all about a game separate from each other. But even the teams that don't feel like they're eliminated just yet, they have to maybe change up what they do, or they've suffered an injury or maybe a quarterback change. So let me know your thoughts on these names that I throw out to you. First one, obvious one, Marshawn Lynch. A lot of people are saying that he's the key to getting the Raiders back into some kind of rhythm to turn around their season. And yes, he was suspended recently, but they brought him back, and you hope it was for more than just like a nostalgic reason. Are you buying or selling him either for a bye week fill or for the rest of the season because of the position that Oakland is in right now?
He's one I think I'm buying, and I think most of the time I think it'll be a case where it's a bye week fill. But he's someone, I think you mentioned it, that's a really good point, that Oakland last week, between both guys that they were rushing, had still less than 60 yards of production on the ground. And they know that. They have Derek Carr throwing for over 300 yards and still losing. So I think they're going to turn to the running game. So I think especially this week and the week following, you're going to see them turn to that ground game more because everyone saw that they needed to win. So I think Lynch is someone who's going to get a lot of carries. I would be hesitant to hit your card to him for the rest of the season, because if he doesn't put out a lot of production in these next 2 games, they might turn away from him again. But I think he's somebody who has shown that he can play well, and that Oakland will try and use him more. So I would say buy on Marshawn Lynch.
Okay, buy on Lynch. Next one is a pair of guys on the same team, because obviously it could change this week. They have announced that there will be a quarterback change going into this next week, but seems like the last, I want to say 4 weeks, and he's one of the guys that I drafted specifically for this position, and I've been so disappointed in him. And for those last 4 weeks, and even going into this next one, he's projected double digits, the higher double digits. Demaryius Thomas, who has done nothing all season, and then, of course, there is Fowler the third, sort of his competition on that team. Who you buying, who you selling?
I am selling. I'm close to selling both, but I think out of those two, I would buy Thomas just because that's the guy that I think would be more of a security blanket. I'm selling Fowler for sure. I just think that we've seen him have a couple big games, but I think that was more so teams still adjusting to what this offense is. And I think what this offense is honestly not very good, especially when you look at it from the fantasy perspective. I think the first couple games this season misled a lot of people on just how productive this offense is going to be. And I think people kind of need to wake up on Fowler the third, that he is a hit or miss guy, feast or famine, but the feast isn't all that great either. I think if you have Thomas on your team, and we've talked about this before, I remember a few weeks back, but it's hard not to play these guys who are projected double digits like Thomas is, because you look like an idiot when he's on your bench and he gets 30. And I understand that. Been there, done that. So maybe if you can get away with Thomas as your last wideout option or your flex, that's a scary bench with Thomas. But also, if you have the option, if you have a safe option to not play Thomas, then go for it. But if you're taking a risk I would just ride it safe with Thomas, and then don't bother with Fowler. I don't think he's going to be worth the time.
Okay, and then this next one is a three-way at the same position, though, and it's because of the things that have happened recently with the teams to their quarterback position. Martellus Bennett in Green Bay, Benjamin Watson in Baltimore, and then the last one is Dixon in Carolina. Him not because of the quarterback, but obviously because of the departure of Kevin Benjamin. Are you buying any of those? Is there anyone that you're absolutely selling of those three at a otherwise very depleted position in fantasy?
Because of what you mentioned at the end there of being depleted, I'm actually leaning towards buying all three of these guys. I think Dixon's someone who's probably, at least in a lot of the leagues that I'm in, already gone. And if he's not in yours, go for it. I think Dixon, out of those three, is the one I like the best. And I think the other two, common sense just tells us that tight end is a security blanket. And I think that Bennett is one who has all the potential we've seen of being a top-tier fantasy tight end. And maybe I think Green Bay goes more towards play action than towards Bennett this week. So I would lean towards Bennett out of the three over. I think I like Watson the least, but I don't dislike Watson. I would not judge at all if you wanted to go with him, if that was what was available. But out of those three, I think I like his options the least, because I think you see someone in Martellus who's going to pick up a lot of production with the injury at quarterback as a security blanket. And I think you see someone in Dixon who's already shown he can produce and should pick up some of those red zone numbers that he was losing to Benjamin. So I really like all three of those options, though, tight end.
All right, all three are a winner in the mind of Jake from FlurrySports.org. So the most controversial position of that being the tight end this season that we've seen in fantasy. These finer details are what's going to help you not only get to your postseason, but go deep into it. So, Jake, I want to thank you again for stopping by the show this evening. Glad we could hook up again and talk a little bit of fantasy, but I look forward to your content on FlurrySports.org, and you have a great rest of your night.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
All right, you take care. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and that's going to do it for this Wednesday, this Fantasy Wednesday edition of The Fan Show. Don't forget to check out mybookie.ag. Where you bet matters and where you gamble matters as well. They're your world leader in betting and gambling. So take your power of prediction to mybookie.ag. Use the promo code TheFanShow when you register and sign up. Get that 50% bonus back. And even if you're not feeling betting the line, the side, or the point spread or whatever, you can play a hand of blackjack or even some craps there. They have everything that you want, and they're built on the 3 R's: reputation, reliability, real fast payouts. I trust them. You should too. So if you're going to go and gamble, if you got an itch, you need to scratch mybookie.ag. They've got the reputation. That's why they're reliable. And when you win, you get a really fast payout. So you play, you win, you get paid, mybookie.ag. And of course, with the Fan Show, so many different flavors available, ways to enjoy and listen. Of course, the home base for football and nonsense is thefanshow.com. You can listen live every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. There's also an episode archive if you missed any of this week's episode or episodes from months and months ago. They're all there, available, ready to go. And of course, you can subscribe through SoundCloud and, of course, on iTunes. Replays are available on WBLZ Sports, the app that you can download in the Apple Store or Google Play. And then, of course, iHeartRadio is one of the new premier flavors of the Fan Show as far as your listening pleasure. So don't forget to follow me on Facebook, facebook.com/FanShowOfficial. Follow me on Twitter, and that is @FanShowOfficial. Check out the Instagram and the Snapchat, both The Fan Show, and then, of course, thefanshow.com. Spreaker.com. You can also listen live, and it has an episode archive as well. But that will do it for this Wednesday edition. Congratulations to the Browns front office on being tonight's ButtFumble Award winner. We'll be back tomorrow night with a brand new episode and a new guest for the Fan Show. It's none that you will want to miss. Enjoy the Game 7 of the World Series tonight. We'll probably talk about it tomorrow night. So, until next time, best of luck to you and yours. Go Niners, and remember, it's all fun and games until you butt fumble. Good night, folks.
Do you remember the time that Mark Sanchez Thank you for having me on the show, man. I love the Fan Show.